This is the full story of how the British invaded, plundered, and looted the Benin Kingdom in February 1897. On February 10, 1897, British soldiers invaded Benin and brought a classic end to the erstwhile powerful kingdom. However, before the invasion, the British and the people of Benin had a healthy trade relationship which started in the 16th century. Their relationship was also solidified with the introduction of Christianity by the British Christian missionaries. So it was that the British-Benin relationship was sustained by trade and religion for centuries. Sadly, the relationship turned sour after the massacre of some British consular officials by Benin soldiers, which resulted in the invasion of Benin. The aftermath of this invasion was the fall of the Benin Kingdom, putting an end to its existence as an independent entity and leading to its annexation to the Niger Coast Protectorate. In 1914, it would join with the rest of Nigeria. The Benin Kingdom was a powerful state between the 12th and 19th centuries. However, its roots can be traced back to the 900s when the Edo people settled in the rainforests of West Africa. The new settlers at first lived in small family groups before developing into a kingdom which was called Igodomigodo. Several kings ruled and they were referred to as Ugisos, which means rulers of the sky. By the 1100s, the Ogisos lost control of their kingdom and fearing that the region would soon become chaotic, they asked the king of Ile-Ife for help and he sent his son, Prince Oronyo, to restore peace to the kingdom. After a while, Oronyo chose his son, Eweka, to become the first Oba of Benin. Oronyo would live to establish the Oyo Empire. Royal power became firmly established during the reign of Oba Ewuare I, also called Oba Ewuare the Great. Previously known as Prince Ogun, Ewuare, who was the first of a succession of warrior kings, reigned from 1440 to 1473, expanded the territory of the kingdom from the Niger Delta in the east to the west and caused it to reach its greatest power and size. Ewuare built an army and rebuilt Benin City, which had been destroyed during his violent takeover of the throne by his younger brother who had betrayed him. The Oba introduced hereditary succession to the throne, that is, the first son of the Oba would be the heir apparent. He made the Oba the supreme economic, judicial, spiritual, and political leader of his people and put to rest the incessant tussles that oftentimes arose after the death of a king. With this, the powers of the Uzama chiefs were diminished. During his reign, the city of Benin was enclosed by long, massive walls. The Benin city walls have been described as the world's largest earthworks done before the mechanical era. Walls and moats were also erected to separate the surroundings of the capital into around 500 distinct villages. At night, the streets were lit by huge metal palm oil lanterns, especially near the king's palace, to provide illumination, making it one of the first modern cities in the world to have a semblance of street lighting. Benin artists were well known for working particularly with ivory, brass and wood, which they used in creating sculptures. Their sculptures usually portrayed historical events, with the heads often life-size and naturalistic. They spared no effort in decorating the city walls with their art and clay carvings, portraying warriors, animals, and other symbols of power. The pillars in the palace were covered with bronze sculpture illustrations of the deeds and victories of previous kings and nobles. Oboiwari succeeded in transforming Benin City into an educated and well-enlightened society where the economy thrived and the arts culture boomed. The fierce warrior king, who was successful with over 200 victories in terms of wars he fought, helped make the Benin Kingdom become one of the largest and famous in pre-colonial Africa. The British romance with the Beninese began in 1553 when the former sent out 2 ships to the Benin River under the command of Captain Thomas Windham. The then Oba of Benin, Oba Orogwa, welcomed them warmly and agreed to sell pepper to them. Sadly, Captain Windham and most of his crew members went down with a fever suspected to be malaria between 1553 and 1556, and almost 100 persons died from the sickness. This resulted in Queen Mary of England prohibiting all voyages by her subjects to Benin due to the loss. But other European vessels still berthed there and traded with the natives. After a while, the British resumed their visits, but the most impact was made by James Welsh and his crew, who were able to withstand the fever, and from January to April 1591 carted 589 salmons of pepper, 32 barrels of palm oil, and 150 tugs back to their country. This success was the breaking ground for booming British-Benin trade relations. Regardless of the healthy trade relations between the British and Benin, their love story ended in a tragedy when the Europeans invaded the city in February 1897, burnt it, and left it in ruins. Trouble started when some of the Niger Coast Protectorate officials, led by the acting consul, James Phillips, ran into an ambush at Ugbine. They had all come to see Oba Ovoramwen Ogbaisi, who was the king at the time, and had sent messengers to inform him of their arrival. However, according to the Benin tradition, the people were celebrating the Agwe festival, and it was a taboo for the king to see strangers during the celebration. Oba Ovoramwen sent the messengers back to tell General Phillips and his men that he could not see them during that period until the next 2 months. Instead of the general complying with the tradition of the people, he responded by saying that he could not wait for 2 months before seeing the king, as he had so much work to do in other parts of the protectorate and would prefer to speak with the king about several issues. This message was viewed by the Benin royal house as a slap on their faces. Despite the intense warning from Oba Ovoramwen that none of the protectorate officials should be killed, Iyase, who was the war chief under the command of Ologbosere and a senior army commander, saw the visit of the officials as a signal of war, and so he, along with some Benin warlords, ambushed the officials and killed them all, except 2 of them who ran into the forests. They hid in the forest for some days before escaping through Ugotin Creek. The response of the British to the massacre of the officials was to invade the city. Ignoring their long-standing view against the use of force, immediate steps were taken and a formidable army was assembled by the British to take down Benin City. Towards the end of the first week in February 1897, about 1,200 men, including Marines, sailors, and protectorate troops, were assembled and prepped for the assault. Rear Admiral Harry Rossin was appointed to lead the invasion, which was planned to take place from 3 fronts. The first column was to advance by way of the Ologbo Creek, The second front was to advance by way of the Jamison River line up to Sakpomba, and the third was to maintain a joint attack through the Ogoton Creek. On February 9, 1897, the invasion finally started, and by the 18th of the same month, the Benin Kingdom fell, ceased to be an independent entity, and was annexed to the Niger Coast Protectorate. The city was set ablaze, although the British would later claim that it was accidental. However, the Benin soldiers put up stiff and heroic resistance to defend the sovereignty and territorial integrity of their kingdom from the invaders, but Rossing's troops had superior war weapons and were able to defeat them. The British Expeditionary Force looted Benin during and after the invasion and carted away the city's precious artworks. Over 2,400 ivory, bronze, and wooden artifacts were stolen. Most of these stolen booty are today being sold out at auctions by European and American art collectors and exhibited in Western museums, mainly Germany. Many buildings were burnt, including the famed King's Court. Oba Ovonramwen was deported to Calabar, where he lived until his death in 1914, and the Benin Native Council was established to replace the institution of the monarchy. Interestingly, exactly 70 years later, Colonel Emeka Ojukwu's Biafra invaded Benin and declared it a sovereign nation. You can learn more about the Biafran invasion of Benin in our next episode.